Hello there! How did the Serbians utilize Israeli software paid for by the Norwegians via the United Nations to spy on Serbian journalists and activists? Because the Balkans are burning once again. And even though we might be used to that, this time something truly inexplicable happened. Not to be outdone by us, the Serbians got a Pegasus of their own. And their own is a key aspect of this whole story. Do you always have to spend a truckload of money on Pegasus, or can it be done much cheaper and not really that much worse? Why is it worth to just turn off your phone sometimes? And do other agencies use similar tools? Let's go! About a year ago, in the Serbian countryside, journalist Slaviša Milanov was stopped for a seemingly routine traffic check. He was accused of driving under the influence of psychoactive substances and briefly arrested, so that tests could be performed to either confirm or deny the suspicion. What's interesting, though, is that the police officer would also ask Slaviša lots of questions about his work, while in the meantime, the journalist's phone, a Xiaomi Redmi Note 10s, was deposited at the police station's reception desk, reportedly in some kind of safe. After further investigation, it was determined that it was all a mistake, and the journalist was let go, with his phone, of course. But Slaviša noticed that something was not right. Yeah, the phone was turned off, just as he left it. But so were the Wi-Fi and data transfer, while the battery was draining in the blink of an eye. He decided to use the mobile verification toolkit, a tool created by Amnesty International because of the whole international Pegasus affair, to check if his suspicions were true. It turns out that during his interrogation, his phone was turned on and unlocked with the Cellebreite software. What's that? A lot of law enforcement utilizes software which allows them to crack the security measures of electronic devices, particularly phones. The Israeli company Cellebreite is one of the key players in this market. It's a pretty sizable corporation with offices and clients all over the world. They largely work on solutions for various investigative agencies to help them gain evidence from a legally confiscated device. At least, that's the idea. The software allows access to encrypted hardware protected by a lock screen by simply using the vulnerabilities in its safeguards, including 0 days. This works even against fairly current system versions, which is one hell of a selling point for this kind of tech. And since most of the time we are talking about equipment confiscated from criminals who happen to be vacationing at the county hotel, those devices remain in the hands of law enforcement for a longer time. All they have to do is wait a while for the software to age a little bit and for some vulnerabilities in its security to be found, which in turn allows access to data gathered on the device. Mind you, this tool does not discriminate whether it's Android or the iPhone. Evidence gathered this way may then be presented in court. Cellebreite is also available in the civilian sector, or more specifically, on the borderline of these two words. For example, they target their products at private detectives or people working professionally in forensic, whether it's for devices which belong to the dearly departed or simply to the forgetful ones who forgot their PIN. This suit is technically called Cellebreite UFED, which is short for Universal Forensic Extraction Device, but everyone and their mom just calls it Cellebreite. However, this software is totally incapable of performing remote invigilation, at least in theory. This is not a surveillance tool like Pegasus, rather something to help with cracking legally obtained devices for the purpose of, say, gaining evidence or helping someone in need. But that doesn't mean it can't be cleverly used for spying at all. When breaking into a device we don't have access code for, it's very helpful to take control of it after it's already been turned on and unlocked at least once. Why? Because phone manufacturers are actively fighting against tools like Cellebreite. Extra security measures are being used for this, such as full and strong encryption for the device's entire memory via long keys when the phone is shut down. When the phone is turned on by pressing the power button and unlocked for the first time, these keys land in cache, so that the whole unlocking process is simply faster from now on. Thus, the separation into two states, AFU and BFU. AFU is a device after first unlock, which means somebody already unlocked it with a PIN or any other password or key. It keeps its decryption keys cached, therefore they no longer need to be cracked, which usually is a fool's errand anyway. Someone just has to find a way to access them. Mind you, this is still very hard, but much easier than the alternative. BFU means before first unlock, a device just turned on and never unlocked. This kind of hardware is much harder to crack since nothing was decrypted yet, but it is not impossible. Apologies for this bit of simplification, but it should give a rough idea. That's why investigators keep confiscated phones which are turned on but locked via PIN numbers constantly plugged into chargers. It's just going to be much easier to crack them after some vulnerability emerges if they remain turned on. Recently, Apple rained on a lot of people's parades when it turned out that after one of their OS updates, iPhones which haven't been unlocked for a while just restart on their own eventually. Back on the topic though, because Slavisha likely knew about that before he gave his phone to the cops, he fully turned it off. So what? Well, nothing. Because as it turns out, Cellebreite was able to crack the device despite its BFU state. This is confirmed by documents leaked from the Israeli company, which indicate that in the case of the journalist's phone, a Xiaomi Redmi Note 10s with a MediaTek CPU, users of the security bypass product do in fact have this kind of technical ability. Why is it so important? Because the Serbians used Cellebreite in a different way than its creator intended. They broke encryption not to gather data after acquiring the necessary warrants from the courts, but to install spyware on the phones. Because Cellebreite was just one small but very vital piece of the puzzle. Further analysis found something on Slavisha phone that was simply never seen before. Traces of a new type of surveillance software. Sometime later, it turned out that the journalist's case wasn't a fringe one, because at least 4 other people were caught up in a similar situation, including an activist from an organization supporting dialogue and peace in the Balkans. The said activist was interrogated over a particular incident. Someone attacked the offices of their organization in retaliation for their condemning of the Russian invasion on Ukraine, which, by the way, means they are in the minority in Serbia. When the activist was testifying about potential crime against them, someone was messing with their phone, which was left in a jacket hanging just outside the room. When they left and looked at the screen, they found a notification about all their phone contacts being exported during the interrogation. It was this device analysis that gave Amnesty International the deepest look yet into the activities of Serbian law enforcement agencies. It was discovered that while the activist was testifying, someone hooked up his Samsung S24 Plus phone into a laptop, already knowing the unlock code for the lock screen. Maybe, just maybe, it has been recorded on some kind of a CCTV camera. Who knows? Next, developer mode was turned on and various changes were made. The Android malware protection Play Protect has been turned off. 2 apps were installed, both with nondescript names. Lastly, automatic phone updates were disabled. Researchers were able to obtain said apps from the victim's phone, but they weren't anything they've ever seen before. The apps were 2 parts of the spyware Novispy, which was actually made by Serbians. Or, at the very least, the Serbians paid someone to make it for them. After cracking the activist's phone open, They gave the apps all possible permissions, then just dug around manually in the gallery, for example, before shutting the phone down and returning it to the victim's jacket as if nothing happened. Alright, but what can this whole Novispy thing even do? Let's dispel some notions. This ain't no Pegasus. Novispy's capabilities aren't nearly as advanced. It can only get inside Android phones. iPhones are a complete no-no. Installing it also requires hands-on access to the victim's phone, as it's impossible to do so remotely. This is where Cellebreite came in. It's why the easiest way to do it is by using some sort of distraction, like, say, an interrogation, which can be prolonged as needed if the agents outside the door need more alone time with the victim's phone. Okay, but is it worth all the hassle? Wouldn't it be better just to buy yourself a Pegasus? Not really. First of all, it's not always possible to purchase it, and creating an alternative with such wide-reaching possibilities would cost a fortune. This is why you might as well just spend a fraction of that sum and get a bit creative. Because Novispy is still a very powerful tool for someone who wants to spy on others. It has a lot of the competition's capabilities. It takes screenshots, can turn on the camera and microphone, copy context, messages, even from encrypted communicators, and lots of other data, then can exfiltrate it into government servers. It does all of that in a frankly quite crude manner. Every device attacked by it is assigned a unique ID, very simply incremented, and then connects with these credentials to an FTP server to which it uploads data. Some real 19th stuff. The ID incrementation lets us roughly estimate how many people fell victim to Novispy, although we don't know when that numeration began. The largest number noted was 644. Researchers also discovered that within a month, that number rose by around 20, though the limited data still prevents us from drawing definitive conclusions. But it all leads to the same inference. The scale of this phenomenon is wider, reaching beyond those few victims we know about. There is also a possibility that a large portion of victims are simply criminals, against whom, and only whom, such methods should be used. Alright, but wait, how can we be so sure that the Serbian forces are behind all of this? In cybersecurity, it's often not enough that something looks like a duck and quacks like a duck to confidently state that it is indeed a duck. Fortunately, we have various tools to help with that. During the analysis conducted by Amnesty International, which helped uncover this whole case, it turned out that the spying was actually ongoing. Data was being collected and sent to the mothership to servers inside the network of Serbia's largest national ESPs. Some of that communication was glimpsed, allowing a look into what the spies got. And they got everything. Screenshots of emails, conversations from private messenger apps, and even mindless Instagram scrolling. Novispy directly connected to IP addresses attributed to the BIA, Serbia's security intelligence agency, among others. It didn't even use a proxy. This exact same address was even used earlier by other spy tools, but we'll get back to that in a moment. Traces of an agent connected to that IP address were also found. Said BIA agent was responsible for implementing similar spyware produced by the since disbanded hacking team. And we know all of that thanks to the leak of their emails and a phone number hard-coded into the tool configuration, which was most likely used for testing. It belongs to the same person previously connected with the IP address of the agency's server. Many Serbian phrases were also found within logs and config files. Finally, Novispy was used solely to spy on Serbian citizens, and each time the software was found on the victims' devices after they came into a contact with local police forces. Amnesty confirmed that 13 victims were directly attacked this way by the spyware. They estimate that Novispy was installed on several dozens, if not hundreds of devices. Of course, Google's threat analysis group was informed about all of this before the materials were published officially. They helped with removing the spyware and sent alerts to the relevant phones, informing their owners that their devices were compromised by the government actor. In the meantime, a zero-day was found in Qualcomm's processors, which was actively used by Cellebrite. Patching it very likely made their life a bit harder and burned a lot of money invested into finding it. So, it's no surprise then that the case is becoming pretty big all over the world. Unfortunately, just like nearly everywhere in the world, Serbia's law can't keep up with the rapid progress of digital spying methods. There's no real idea how to approach them and how to regulate them, which means the agencies adopt a "don't ask, don't tell" policy. Don't ask if they can't, don't tell they did something. Less invasive methods, such as wiretaps, are very well regulated, and they can only be utilized in very particular cases decided by law and in very specific timeframes. When it comes to contemporary surveillance methods, there is no real sense of what's allowed and what isn't. So simply everything is done instead, and data obtained this way can reach far, far into the past. This isn't the place and time to analyze whether Serbia is a law-abiding country or not. I don't really know enough, so to the possible surprise of many, I will keep my 2 cents to myself. But it's worth taking a look into the past, because this is neither anything new, nor even the beginning of this whole story. Because everything truly began a long, long time ago. Last year, Amnesty International, Citizen Lab, Access Now and the Serbian Share Foundation, which fights for human rights and civil liberties, all joined forces to discover that advanced surveillance software is utilized in Serbia against its citizens. This was confirmed by Apple's alerts as well, which pointed out devices potentially compromised by attacks of this sort. In this case, directly with Pegasus. More in-depth, independent analyses conducted on the devices by several institutions have confirmed previous attacks on phones belonging to 2 separate victims, which happened around the summer vacations. It wasn't possible to confirm it with 100% accuracy, but all signs were pointing to the infamous Pegasus and Predator systems. These tools were reportedly used by the aforementioned Serbian Security Intelligence Agency. The targets were 2 social activists from Belgrade who were openly criticizing the Serbian government. As you can see, the recent discoveries fit a certain pattern of behavior. The Serbian government, together with its law enforcement, utilizes surveillance methods which blatantly break the norms of a democratic country. They've used practically everything that's widely known on the market, which in itself is one hell of an achievement. The BIA's director is also on the list of people sanctioned by the United States due to his public support for Russia's actions, stoking nationalist sentiments in the Balkans, on top of being suspected of ties to arms dealers. But what happens when everyone learns about this? Activists and victims underscore that these revelations had a massive negative influence on them. They feel their privacy has been stripped away from them and their voices were silenced. Some simply abandoned their work, believing none of it is actually worth much. Others stopped trusting anyone and anything. Journalists are afraid for their sources, as de-anonymizing them this way would be a child's play. The Serbian agencies published a statement in which they claim that everything was done in accordance with local laws, so there is really nothing for them to comment on. According to them, the, and I quote, so-called report by Amnesty International is nonsense. Surprisingly, even Cellebreite chimed in to say that if these accusations are confirmed, this kind of usage can potentially infringe on the license agreement, because it's supposed to help with securing evidence, not with spying on people, even if it was just used as an additional tool. Reportedly, Cellebreite even contacted Serbian officials about it. After all, this is the first documented case like this, and it creates a dangerous precedent. Alright, but how did the Serbs even get their hands on Cellebrite in the first place? This is actually a pretty interesting and kind of funny story. It was part of a software package that the Norwegians and the United Nations basically gifted to the Serbs. It was supposed to help the country fulfill a set of requirements pertaining to the fight against organized crime, which Serbia has to meet as one of the conditions for joining the European Union. Well, safe to say that the EU and Norway won't be particularly happy once they learn what it was actually used for. The Norwegians, in fact, already know and reportedly are looking into the case. They've made it clear that if it's all true, they want nothing to do with it, and they were deceived. What to do and how to live. Don't give anyone your phone. If you're going somewhere and you suspect it might be taken from you at some point, maybe just leave it at home. If you find yourself in a situation where it's not possible, always make sure to turn it off before leaving it with someone. It will make the lives of those said folks in black much harder. Update your phone whenever it's possible. If you can avoid using devices that no longer receive security updates or do so rarely. I'm specifically talking about all those Chinese thingamajigs and antiques from those manufacturers who simply leave their clients hanging dry. Are Cellebrite's hands as clean as they claim? Not entirely, because they do have a separate tool for those more hardcore privacy invasions. Cellebreite UFID Cloud, which allows the user to download credentials from a cracked device and use them, for example, to search through a victim's social media accounts. It also pulls your search history. So, while they may market themselves as the opposition to, say, the NSO group as a more socially responsible provider, their products are still used by China, Belarus, or Myanmar, formerly known as Burma. The Novispy case points to one more thing. Spy surveillance tools slowly but surely stop being the domain of just the biggest players on the international stage. They begin to trickle down and become much cheaper, which means they can be used not only to hunt the fat cats, but also against those on the lower ranks of society. Criminals, yes, but not just them. By the way, I'm launching my newsletter in the upcoming days, where you will find a weekly dose of links and news from the IT and AI industry. Want to sign up? You'll find a link down below. That's all for today, folks. Thanks for watching, and see you later!